Hayden Howard loved puppies, but she couldn't ignore the level of responsibility they entailed. Raising her children was not easy, and she knew that a puppy would mean having another toddler in the house. Indeed, they can attract all kinds of trouble, and it is imperative to always keep an eye on them, because disaster can happen quickly. If only she knew how much before their nightmare unfolded. Before we start, can we get this video to 1,000 likes? Please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Despite what naysayers may think of them, dogs have a certain charm that people can't find in any other animal. Hayden felt that his children deserved this gift. A furry playmate would mean everything to them, and their happiness and laughter would be worth all the hassle. At least, that's what this lady thought, and who could really blame her? Hayden thought it would be a good idea to adopt a puppy. After an emotional visit to the shelter, the decision became increasingly difficult to make. She wished she could adopt all of these adorable creatures, but alas, she had to decide which would be the best fit for her household. For some reason, the eyes of the future pet owner fell on a puppy. This fluffy pup was just perfect. She wanted to give him a name before he came into their home. Somehow, the name Jackson seemed to fit this one. Now Hayden could take the puppy home and get used to a whole new life. The Howard family was thrilled to welcome a new member into their home. Of course, they had wanted to have a dog for a long time. So Hayden immediately introduced him to the rest of her family when she brought the dog home. Everyone couldn't resist hugging him and snuggling up against his soft fur. Jackson seemed to befriend the kids much faster than Hayden had expected, and it filled her with joy. But as the days passed, the owner began to notice something odd about her beloved pup. Her playful character suddenly changed. He grew quieter and more melancholy. It even seemed that his eyes were sad. What could be going on? A stomach problem? Hayden was worried, but she couldn't find any reason to explain their dear Jackson's change. What could have happened for Jackson to change like that? She started to pay more attention to the dog, and that's when she noticed something quite disconcerting. Hayden Howard, originally from Indiana, valued family first. She wanted to give her children an important step in their lives, their first pet. It was a big event, but Hayden was confident her son and daughter would make it through. After all, it would also teach them the concept of responsibility. Since Jackson hadn't been on his plate lately, Hayden gave him a little more attention and started stroking his body, as the pooch loved being petted, especially after a long day of playing outside. However, something caught her off guard when she touched Jackson's stomach. What was on her stomach? But something sinister had happened. Unfortunately, Jackson's fur was different today. She wasn't as fluffy as before, and there were bumps on almost every inch of her chest. To put it simply, he was starting to have stains. There could be a handful of reasons behind these mysterious spots, but what could it be? Hayden noticed the strange markings on Jackson, and she was taken aback. Why was his body changing like that all of a sudden? Jackson and Hayden's kids spent the whole afternoon playing and running around in the garden. Maybe his hair got caught in plants with thorns and hurt his skin. Or worse, maybe Jackson had a pollen allergy. Again, Hayden was thinking about other possibilities and reasons that could explain his dog's somewhat strange behavior. It's been an uneventful past few days at the Howards, so Hayden thought whatever was bothering Jackson might be gone. He was just as rambunctious as ever, toying with whoever was available in the family. Nobody would have ever thought that something was wrong with Jackson because he was just like any other dog. Whether he was bitten by bugs or had a stomachache a few days ago, doesn't matter now. The pup showed no signs of injury. On the other hand, it was also likely that it was bee or wasp stings, since it was already spring. But Jackson would probably be in a lot of pain if he did, bee venom being excruciatingly painful. Whatever bug was guilty, Hayden hoped Jackson wasn't suffering in secret. But there was one question that never left Hayden's mind. Why weren't those bites fading or disappearing? She bathed the puppy regularly, and yet those stains were still there. Hayden felt it was best to see a vet. Needless to say, if it was a contagious disease, her children could also be at risk. They spent almost all of their free time with Jackson, and if he was in danger, it would only be a matter of time before the disease spread. But what she couldn't fathom was that Jackson was still cheerful. except for his initial lethargic attitude that had disappeared. Unfortunately, Hayden began to notice something alarming about Jackson's fur. It hadn't before. Looking closer, Hayden saw that those little holes were really bleeding. Oh, what a fright! Hayden was deeply shaken, and she didn't even want her kids to see it. What was happening to Jackson? It was time to take Jackson to the vet. Perhaps the doctor would have a concrete explanation of his dog's condition and recommend a suitable treatment plan. Hayden had never seen a dog with so many weird bumps on his body, not to mention so many holes. Hayden thought no one but Dr. Sunbury could help her pup. As expected, the doctor's first diagnosis was similar to Hayden's. A bug infestation was an easy guess, as there were bumps on the animal's stomach and back, and he liked to play outside. But upon closer inspection, the vet was horrified to find something much worse. Dr. Sunbury spoke to Hayden and asked for his consent to shave off some of Jackson's fur. Hayden was surprised by this request, but agreed when he said it would only be around the holes. If that's what it takes to find an answer, then shaving shouldn't be a problem. Eventually, the vet removed the fur, and it revealed something awful. The tiny sting-like holes looked even bigger once the fur was removed, and it was traumatic to see Jackson lying like that on the vet's stretcher. Everyone in the exam room was amazed to see the multiple holes in the poor pup's body. Who could have done such a thing? A heartbreaking thought crossed Hayden's mind, but she immediately dismissed it. Never ever would her two children think of hurting their pet dog. They were playmates and loved each other dearly. Who was behind this inhuman act? After these findings, the vet wanted to see if the holes were infected, and he thought it was ideal to start with a routine blood test. After Jackson's thorough examinations, the vet revealed that the holes had not been caused by an insect bite, but by lead pellets. Hayden's gaze changed from concern to anger. She was speechless at this sad news. Hayden racked his brains to find every possible time this cruel act was committed. Jackson usually hung out in the front yard with his kids, so he was in a safe zone. But now she became even more dismayed when she realized the shooter could have hurt her children too. What if one of the bullets had hit his son or daughter in the head? This thought was terrifying and alarming. What's amazing about Jackson is that he acted like there were no lead pellets in his body. Most people tend to say that these are just toys and therefore regulation is problematic. Anyone with the cash to burn can buy a lead shotgun in almost any city across the country. A lot of information has come to light since Hayden took Jackson to the vet. But there is one thing that torments her above all else: the idea that her dog has suffered for days without Hayden noticing. Dr. Sunbury was also sensitive to Hayden and Jackson's plight, and he discussed possible options for the dog to recover more quickly. At this point, scheduling an operation would be the next reasonable step. Carefully, Dr. Sunbury began the delicate procedure and tackled the holes that weren't that deep, then those that were lodged in the more difficult areas. In total, Jackson had a total of 21 bullets in his body, and that was not all. Nothing could have prepared Dr. Sunbury for the number of lead bullets he found in Jackson's chest. Shaking his head in disbelief, the vet continued and removed another 7 bullets. It was not normal for a dog to suffer such savagery without the culprit being caught. The surgery was a huge success, but the vet also found out more about Jackson's assault. Apparently, he had numerous bruises around his body, which means he received more bullets than the actual number of pellets collected, more or less 60 rounds. The marks indicate that the bullets must have bounced off instead of penetrating his skin. Other than that, Dr. Sunbury suspected that there were probably more lead bullets left. Unfortunately, it will take a lot of effort and testing before we can confirm this. Evidence has been left behind, that's for sure. Once Hayden knew Jackson was out of the woods, she rushed Seymour Police and passed on everything she knew. To get things moving, authorities decided to start the investigation in the most obvious place, the Howard's backyard. It didn't take long before they found a lead that could potentially lead to Jackson's attacker. While inspecting the yard, the police found many lead balls lying on the ground like garbage. It was obvious that the stranger only committed this evil deed from afar. And luckily, they found the first clue that would help enormously in finding the perpetrator. Eventually, they came to a house that was lined up nicely with the tree and knocked on the first suspect's door. Everyone felt tense and didn't know what type of person it was. More importantly, what if the person reacted negatively to the presence of the police? The man residing in the house was named Tim Woodward, and he had lived there for some time. Predictably, he was confused as to why the police were on his doorstep, but he also said nothing that could incriminate him. By contrast, Mr. Woodward remained silent, even when police found he had a pellet gun similar to the ammunition found. And what was even more curious was his criminal record. Indeed, Tim Woodward was a prime candidate for the Jackson bombing. He just had to find evidence that would at least make him confess. Hayden wondered if Tim was new to the neighborhood or if he didn't know who they were, because if he was, he probably wouldn't have hurt Jackson. All the signs and evidence pointed to Tim as the dog's aggressor, but that wasn't enough. Although his house is closest to the scene of the incident, the police could not identify him as the sole perpetrator of the crime. And for Hayden and his family, it was unfair that whoever did this to Jackson escaped punishment and went free. Although he was cleared for allegedly shooting Jackson with lead shot, Tim had other issues to deal with due to other items found in his accommodation. Apparently, he was dealing with illegal substances in quantities large enough for immediate arrest. At least, in a way, even though the cops didn't apprehend Jackson's attacker, there was one less villain in the community since Tim was taken to jail. Hayden didn't get the justice she was hoping for, but it's better than nothing. Her neighborhood will be safer for everyone. The distraught animal lover offered $500 for the initiative and waited patiently despite all the pessimistic feedback from the police. They told him that in cases like Jackson's, no one comes forward for fear of trouble. It's the standoff Hayden has been dreading ever since police began investigating. The Howards wanted their dog to be safe and secure from further harm in the future. Hayden knew she owed that safety to Jackson. For now, she and the kids are doing what they can to help their pup make a full recovery. Still, Hayden knew she would never forget how this event changed her family's lives. It was not easy to accept that the criminal was still at large, but in the meantime, their priority was Jackson's health. Maybe one day they can finally turn the page and bring justice to Jackson and all the other abused animals. If only this day could come sooner.